how would we bring schools into this? How would we begin to get schools as participants in this? There's a number of ways in. I mean, I'm experimenting with a number of different options. I mean, one very simple one is to think of the school as being on a journey. And as you walk into the school, what's the experience that you encounter as you walk through the school gates, up to the school door and into the school? And if that journey is tarmac, concrete, bricks, dustbins, whatever it might be, it gives you one certain version of a school. If, however, as you walk into school, you're able to pick strawberries, or you're able to see an apple tree, or you're able to walk past herbs and brush past and get the scent, you've suddenly got a very different aesthetic about what that place might be about. And so the outside-inside becomes quite important, in a sense, the relationship between the building and the environment around the school. And we've discovered in many of our projects that the school sites are very often very good sites to begin to think about this whole idea of a literate, ecologically literate environment. Because the schools are often, at this point, rather monocultural. They'll have a playing field, they'll have a couple of trees, and they'll have a bit of tarmac. And what we can do very quickly is take that concept and explore that with students and say to them, okay, look at that as a field and think of it as a single culture. You've got to do a lot of things to keep this field as it stands. You've got to cut the grass, you've got to continue to put fertiliser on it to keep it in good condition. You have to do all of these managing and manicuring activities. Then if you think of that place as a forest or as a jungle, nobody orchestrates those things. They've existed for millennia. And what becomes very interesting is, how do we perhaps look at that as a concept which we then bring to the school site and get children involved in designing a forest garden? How do we get them to think about the type of plants that might be native to the environment we're in? You've got to obviously plant appropriately to the environment you're in. So they have to think about that and investigate that. They then become more engaged in looking at the exact ecosystem around them and connecting that to the data they can gather to inform what they might then put into that environment. So you begin with very simple steps, just the simple audits of the place. What's the temperature? What's the climate? What's the basic sort of framework of this landscape that we are encountering in our school site? And for little children, that might just be that you spend time putting seeds into pots, and then you put the pots outside and you watch what happens, and it happens to grow into a pea or a carrot. And at the end of that period of time, when it's nurtured, you can eat it. And you've then got the residue of that becomes a compost. And you've got them immediately into the cycle of life, because they're then enriching the soil that becomes the stuff that you plant the next pea into. So we look at little cycles of activity that continually reinforce the idea that people are part of this environment and that there are cyclical processes going on that are interrelated. And our curriculum can do that, and we can bring in the science, the mathematics, the art, the history, the physical, sport, the well-being, all of those component parts of what we already want to teach students, but we use the eco-literacy as our key way to get there. Yeah, the transition to the larger scale, to something such as an eco-city, is a massive, massive challenge, and yet many of the patterns that we've developed and designed inside the Incredible Edible project are repeatable in other larger scale initiatives. So the idea of urban environments in the future having to feed themselves is something I think we've got to take very seriously, because the movement of food takes a great deal of energy. And we've got to look again, I think, at the interrelationship between the built environment and the natural environment as a solution rather than an impediment to progress. And instead of destroying ecosystems within our cities, I think we've got to be encouraging them. And so the transferability of the ideas from Incredible Edible into concepts such as eco-cities is very, very palpable. It's very possible. Because in a sense, every eco-city is a neighbourhood. And we have a number of neighbourhoods that join together to create the city. It doesn't mean you do it all as one enormous piece. You look at it, in a sense, as a modular question. and you start to experiment with that modular question in different zones and then build that on, and they overlap and they interrelate. And that's exactly the type of systemic thinking which I think has to be part of our design, that we look at the thing as a whole, but we also look at the detail. So that the relationship between the detail and the dynamic is all around us in the natural world. You know, it's the way that our ecosystems function. And I think we have to utilise that as our key pattern and then bring that into the built environment of the city and use it to model all the ways in which we then work our daily lives in those places, because those are the places that are going to be the things that make or break us in the next century. We're not going to leave our cities, we're going to continue to live in them, so we have to redesign them and retrofit them for a new future. The eco-cities that China are building at the moment are in the region of 500,000 people up to about 10 million. So they are massive shifts in population. Some of them are virgin territory, new design built areas. Some of them are refitting and rethinking those environments for the future. The process of getting there is going to be difficult because it takes energy to create new cities, and the energy that is being used is obviously a finite resource in some cases. You know, that if it's carbon based to create it, that poses a lot of problems. So the label of eco-city, I think, is quite problematic, but it's useful because it gives people a sense of what they're aiming for. And so in that regard, I think it's an important pointer towards what type of future we need to have. It doesn't necessarily mean at the moment that we're there. I think we're very much on the early stages of this, but the scale is quite mind-blowing in terms of numbers of people. And that obviously means that we need people from all around the planet, in a sense, to be working together to understand and to ensure that the direction that we take suits the circumstances that we know we're moving towards. And that's a challenge. It's a serious challenge. Yeah. If you're interested, then I have a blog that I've been running for 3 or 4 years now, which has all of the things I write about as open source material. Both published papers and thoughts as we go along, bits of film and such like. The blog is www.sustainableretreat.blogspot.com. Thank you, Google. The website for Incredible Edible is incredible-edible-todmorden, TODMORDEN.co.uk. And again, it's open source and it's an exciting website. There's a lot of things on there and it gives a lot of links. So both of those resources are just available for people to play with.
Thank you for visiting us in Bergen, Clarke, and for an inspiring and challenging lecture.
It's been a great pleasure.